It's the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. The Sports Hit List presents Smoking Mirrors with Declan Krogman and the Polius Brothers, Greg and Stefan, breaking down the biggest news in sports, giving you the stories behind the story. Here for all the smoke, all the time, right here on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
Good afternoon and happy Friday. This is Smoke and Mirrors, presented by the Sports Hit List on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. I'm your host, Stephen Polius, alongside my fellow hosts, Declan Krogman and Greg Polius. It's a beautiful day out. How you fellas doing? Deck, how you doing, bud?
Not bad, man. Hanging in there. You know, we had a tough week, long week. Getting back, hitting our stride a little bit. Excited it's Friday. Excited for the show and take this show as a high onto the weekend.
Nice. Greg, what about you?
Semester's winding down, so it's a little stressful, but I got some new glasses today, so I guess that's a positive.
And you're here.
I thought I noticed
it's
the
fire,
frames.
bro. You get
Thank
a shape
you,
up?
thank
Looks like you got a little shape up.
I mean, I didn't twist it. I twisted it up here. You know, I used the Curl Mix products. You know, shout out to Ma.
Mm-hmm. You look like 5 years younger, bro.
I'll take it.
Yeah, it's nice. My week's been busy. Like kind of a mixed bag. Happy it's Friday. Excited for this show. But before we start, I did want to just acknowledge rest in power to Terrence Clark, a former shooting guard for University of Kentucky. He passed away in a car accident in L.A. I believe it was last night.
He was only 19.
He's only 19 years old. So condolences, blessings, and love to his family and his friends. It's tough to lose any life when they're that young and so much promise and life ahead of them. So rest in power. Again, blessings and love to his family and just wishing them strength during this time.
Absolutely.
But
he was going to go to the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
He was going to go to the NBA next year. He was going to be in the first round at minimum.
Yeah, had a long life ahead of him for sure.
Definitely.
But to get into our show, want to start with something fun for any New Yorker. I don't care if you are a former fan of a particular team or
I was waiting for this
a current fan. But it's gonna be May soon, and the Knicks are still in contention, which is it's odd for Knicks fans. It's odd for the NBA, really.
The fact that you just had to say that, it's odd for the Knicks to be in contention, gives you an idea of how bad they have been.
Listen.
That's not the focus today.
It isn't. But also, everyone knows that already, all right? As long you don't even have to follow basketball to know the Knicks have been bad for decades. So
that's accurate.
It's understandable that they're the 4th seed now in the Eastern Conference, all right? They had some really good play. They have an 8-game winning streak right now that they're trying to keep alive. Out of those 8 games, at least 3 teams were above 500. The Hawks, they played the Mavericks twice and beat them, and the Grizzlies. So it's not like they're going against the bottom of the barrel and beating up on them. They've played some decent teams and still pulled out the wins. Declan, what are you thinking? I'm going to let the Grizzly fan go last since his team did lose to the Knicks. But Declan, what do you think?
Shade.
Yeah, this is not to be put to rest. We're going to have to give our Knicks fans, or just the Knicks in general, their flowers. Listen, 4th seed in the Eastern Conference in the NBA. You got the defending Eastern Conference champions, the Miami Heat. Shout out to Deb, the B Show. That's her team. Right behind the Knicks. And we got Carl's Boston Celtics and my Boston Celtics well behind the New York Knicks, which is a shocking statement to make. I think the only time that I would really expect to make it is maybe opening night. But it's May, and that's what's going on now. The Knicks are a force to be reckoned with. They got Julius Randle's really, putting in the work. RJ Barrett's been making some strides in year 2.
Looking good.
To say that they've shattered and exceeded expectations would be a severe understatement. This is a New York team that's not the Nets that is going to be in the playoffs this year. 2 out of the 4 top seeds in the Eastern Conference at this moment play in New York between the Nets and the Knicks. So there might not be a rivalry now with them, but it's certainly going to get interesting.
We haven't seen it before.
We have not seen it before.
This
Never.
First. This
is the biggest. Yeah, I would say this is the biggest Knicks run that they've had since Linsanity, or maybe since 2013 when
Linsanity doesn't count. That was like 9 games.
Well, you know what? This has been 8 games. So
yeah,
no,
I don't.
I thought you were talking about season wise because you said to this date.
No,
I didn't
I'm
think
saying
it's that. The stretch
this
right
run,
now.
this stretch that they have right now is we haven't seen anything like it since Linsanity. If you want to talk about season wise, I would say that they had a season or two after Jeremy Lin left for Houston. Led by Melo, you saw the likes of Kenyon Martin off the bench. Obviously, Amari Stoudemire was big. Raymond Felton, I think, came in. We saw this team get hot. Yeah, exactly. We saw this team get hot. I want to say it was 2013. They beat the Celtics and Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett's last series and Jason Terry's last series in Boston. So this Knicks team hasn't seen the light since about 2013. So that's crazy.
Greg, what do you think about your former? Wait. What do you think about your former team thriving? Now, some would say it might have taken them losing you to truly get to this point.
I was about to make that little comparison.
But only some, not all. Maybe you are the key to their success. But what do you think? What are your thoughts as a Grizzly fan, former Knicks fan?
I'm happy for Knicks fans, right? Knicks fans deserve this. They've been suffering for eons at this point. So I'm happy for the fans. The issue comes in when you have people after like the 8-game winning streak already talking about like them being a top 2 seed in the Eastern. I've seen it on social media, and it's just like, all right, guys, let's just take it one day at a time. You know, you're in a position you haven't been in a couple decades. Let's just enjoy the ride. But as far as that, you know, they're playing well. I do think that Tibbs needs the rotation to get a little deeper because in the playoffs, your bench matters because teams will get run out of gym, you know, if their second unit is not up to par. And I think some of those younger guys need to start getting, you know, more meaningful minutes. You usually probably go maybe IQ. 8-9 deep in IQ's minutes are so inconsistent. Mm-hmm. It's actually really frustrating to watch, not from a fan perspective, but from a basketball perspective. A young player who showed serious upside when given the minutes, you know, so that's a little frustrating.
He's a good scorer.
I mean, even if you talk about IQ,
yeah.
Even if you look at Tibbs when he was in Chicago, Jimmy Butler, I think averaged like 11 or 12 minutes a game, if that, his rookie year. You know, so there's something with Tibbs, and you know,
it's not just him though.
It's not just him. Jeff Van Gundy was like that too with the Knicks, and I hated it.
It's really big with Tibbs and the defense. So he
is
time and times again that's going to be the decision maker.
No, Zane is in the comments. Zane, I would say that Steve Kerr had an entire second unit that he would run out there. I forgot what they called them, and they would run teams out the gym in the playoffs because he said they only, unless you're Mike D'Antoni, you'll go 6 deep in the postseason. I think 6 deep is a little extra. Like you run your players down in a long series.
Definitely, long series against a good team. You just can't you can't last. You cannot last them. Well, congrats to the Knicks fans and to the Knicks.
Let's go Grizzlies.
Well deserved. Oh, this guy.
Well deserved.
You know what? I don't even think we have anybody watching in Memphis. There's just no reason.
Listen. First of all, Jaren Jackson Jr. just came back, had a great game, 4 blocks. You know, played well on the defense. We still had no Jonas Valanciunas. They're a young team. They're up and coming, but we're still more talented than the Knicks. I will say that.
Greg is
what seed are the Grizzlies in?
They're 8th seed in the West.
Yeah.
All right. So
Greg's going to be the reason we get into the Memphis market.
No, so see right there. This is what I'm.
Yeah, right. We'll be blasting country music as our intros.
What I'm saying is, if we go talent for talent based on a roster, the Grizzlies are more talented than the Knicks. But the Knicks have more veteran leadership and are playing better. But as far as talent goes, you know, that's what it is.
Well, and on that note, we're gonna put a cap on that. Again, congrats to the Knicks.
I kind of like that though.
The Knicks. And moving on to our next topic here, we have a fun story. Everybody's been paying attention to Steph Curry's 30-plus point game streak. And it was amazing. It was 11. It did end at the 12th game. But the media coverage of it was pretty spectacular. I mean, there were a lot of talking heads, and I think just players that were beside themselves with joy and praise for Steph Curry. And it should be noted that in 2019, James Harden had a even greater feat. He had 32 games in a row, which he scored 30 plus points. An impressive streak, the second longest streak in NBA history, next to Wilt Chamberlain. But the coverage of it does seem to be a little bit different. And I've been looking to see the mentions, see like the difference, the comparison, and it does pale in comparison to how Steph Curry has been spoken about. And I know there's some different factors there, but Greg, what are your thoughts? How do you feel about Steph getting, the lion's share of these compliments and again this praise, whereas James Harden maybe not so much?
I mean, we all know Steph is the golden child of the NBA, right? He's the face of the league, even after LeBron. But I think his ability to shoot and score in bunches and shoot however many threes, like he's an anomaly in terms of the NBA. Back in the day, guys like Steph Curry would get benched for some of the shots he takes, even if he made it or not. So the visual aspect of that is alluring. Like people want to see that. And so the media then covers it in the same aspect. Like, oh my God, look at what he's done. But when Harden was doing it, I actually think it was more impressive because he did it not only for a much longer stretch of time, but I also think Harden is so underappreciated and undervalued as an offensive talent in the NBA. And it showed in how the fans and media speak about him. They talk about how he always flops. Oh, he dribbles too much. He gets all his points. He doesn't play. I'm talking strictly from an offensive perspective. He gets all his points from the foul line, but they don't take a step back to realize how efficient and effective he is as an offensive player.
Jack, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that definitely has a lot to do with it. And I think another big reason, and Greg kind of alluded to it in a way, Steph is definitely the golden child of the NBA. And I know Kevin Durant is, you could say he's one of the greatest scorers of all time, one of the best pure scorers. Where you put him in the top 20 basketball players all time, that's fine. But as far as commanding attention and growth of the game, Steph Curry has an upper hand on him, in my opinion. And I think that does have a lot to play with how he's viewed and how the media covers him and how the fans alike put him in that light. And I think that has a lot to do with why there's been more attention drawn to him over James Harden. And I think we can agree that what James Harden did was more impressive. I think a lot of it has to do as well that I don't want to say because Steph is a couple-time MVP, finals.
James Harden got robbed by Russell Westbrook.
Yes, but even still, he didn't win the MVP. So I'm just getting to that. We have Steph, who's a multi MVP and a multi finals champion, and that also holds some weight, and that's why people I think kind of put him in that light as well. I think Steph Curry is compared very similar to how Patrick Mahomes is compared, and in how that if Brady's LeBron, Mahomes is Curry, that kind of thing. And I think that although Harden is a proven player and he's let's call a spade, he's going to be a Hall of Famer.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%, no doubt, first ballot Hall of Famer. Even still, and it's a shame, is that Steph Curry is going to get more recognition for who Steph Curry is. And especially now that the Warriors are a little bit depleted, injury-wise and with guys out, you're going to kind of look to see, Steph is carrying this team. Because we also saw the other side when they were saying that Steph, not doing it alone by himself and that team not being any good earlier in the year was just as a result of Steph. So you're also going to see some heat in that regard for Steph, but then you're going to see, it's going to be magnified times a million when he starts doing good with not many players of value on the court. I
agree with Greg on this one. Lean more towards his side. As I'm looking at it, it comes down to what I tend to see a lot when we talk about narratives. There's the unfortunate light skin versus dark skin narrative, where a light skinned player in this case can tend to get the more favorable narrative than the darker skinned player. And, I even looked at it in an article too. So this article is written by Mark Eppers at USA Today. And he wrote an article about James Harden's 32-game streak and one about Steph Curry's. And they're very night and day. The adjectives he uses for Steph Curry, it's so flattering. Whereas with the James Harden article, it was just facts. He was just talking about facts. He spoke mostly about the game and some of the highlights throughout the streak, but he did not heap the praise onto James Harden the way he did for Steph Curry. And we see that a lot. And, talking about the play style of James Harden, I think that those are narratives that you do see sometimes that get pressed upon certain players. I will say, though, in that USA Today article, it was just one of the quotes I thought was interesting. It's the longest such streak in league history by a player 33 years or older. He passed Kobe Bryant because Kobe had 10 in 2012. But I understand wanting to make it seem great, but you added the caveat of 33 and older, right? Because James Harden, I think, did it when he was 29. You didn't have that article didn't need that, but
it was forced in there.
Exactly. You twist the stats to make it seem like it's unobtainable. This is the first time we've ever seen this. We didn't that wasn't necessary. James Harden did and had a more impressive feat. Steph Curry averaged, I think it was 40 points per game during this streak. James Harden in 32 games averaged 41.1. The fact that he can maintain that kind of scoring for a longer period of time is very impressive. He had a few triple doubles during that time span. So it wasn't just like he was taking a bunch of shots and not caring about facilitating for the team or grabbing boards. He was doing all of that, which is just, again, it shows just how much more impressive to me James Harden was, but there is a difference in how he is viewed and how the media and even how we perceive that feat.
I mean, just to kind of go back, I'm going to shout out the comment section in a minute, but people truly do not appreciate what James Harden did for the franchise in Houston. Before James Harden went to Houston from OKC, nobody talked about the Rockets. He made them a perennial playoff contender. And like Zane pointed out in the comments, during that streak, they had 4 out of their 5 starters out. And the reason the Rockets stayed relevant was because of James Harden's offensive prowess. And
do you think, not to cut you off quickly, but do you think the naysayers have a lot to say because he's taking more shots now that these guys aren't getting the touches?
No, I was actually going to speak to one of the naysayers in the comments, Mike Phillips.
Carl?
And Mike Phillips. He actually spoke directly to what I addressed in my first point about he says, he's mastered the flop and he cries too much to the refs. I don't want to hear that. There are clips of Reggie Miller, Michael Jordan,
LeBron,
all these guys. No, not LeBron. I'm talking older.
Fine.
When we were growing up, like me and Mike are around the
80s,
same
90s,
age. We've seen these guys cry to refs for fouls. We've seen them flop. So to say Harden only gets his points from the line because he flops is inaccurate. Everybody in the NBA flops. It's your job. It's a part of the game to try to draw fouls.
You gotta sell it.
Or defense.
Yeah.
So stop making like this is some type of bad thing. If a guy can draw fouls, that is a positive in his game. So why are we trying to make it seem like it's a negative to downplay James Harden and his ability to drop 30 on a whim?
Yeah, and we also have another guy in the comments. The man himself, Carl Coulange, says they hate on Steph. He takes an opposite path as our Steph did. He said they hate on Steph because he is light-skinned. What are our thoughts on that?
I mean, just quickly to go over that, I think that Steph Curry in the past has received a lot of criticism for not carrying his own team. And I think that's kind of part of the course for a player. Like when you're that high up on the in the stratosphere, you will receive some criticism. I just think that it's in comparison to, again, like a James Harden or even a LeBron James, where, you'll have people like Skip Bayless who go after LeBron James as not being a finisher, not being a clutch player. Like all of these fallacies that we will create, because we wanted to sound a certain way to make them to depict them a certain way. I don't necessarily think Steph Curry gets that same type of hate. It's different. I'm not saying that he doesn't get anything at all.
I agree. I think Skip Bayless is kind of he says what he says. It doesn't mean that exactly. He's by himself. Another thing Carl says was it doesn't make it right, but that's the NBA. James Harden is a great player, but because of his postseason failures, he doesn't get the nod. Do we think compared to James Harden's, I don't want to say postseason failures like Carl did. He said that's the NBA. James Harden's playoff performances versus Steph Curry's playoff performances, do you think that plays a factor in how they're treated and how this run has been viewed by media in the NBA?
So whose question? That was Carl. So, I mean, the postseason failures thing is something that I've always had an issue with because the Rockets wouldn't be in certain positions without James Harden. So that's something we could actually bring Carl on and have a discussion even further if we want to do that, one of these days. But I think there's definitely a further discussion to have.
Agreed. I like that. We're going to go to commercial break right now. Everybody stay locked in. This is Smoke and Mirrors presented by the Sports Hitless on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. We'll be right back.
It's the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. This is Smoke and Mirrors on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
Welcome back. This is Smoke and Mirrors, presented by the Sports Hitless on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. I'm your host, Stephen Polius, alongside my couple of hosts, Declan Krogman and Greg Polius. We're talking NBA, and we're going to stick with that. So just want to get into the controversial tweet by LeBron James. For those that don't know, there was a police shooting of a 16-year-old young girl named Ma'Khia Bryant, and LeBron James put out a tweet that he deleted that essentially had a supposed picture of Nick Reardon, who was the police officer that shot Ma'Khia. And in the caption, it said, "You're next, #accountability." That was what was deleted. He followed that tweet up with accountability, just alone. And it received a lot of backlash by many people in the Twitterverse and just in society, in the world. I have a lot to say about this, but Greg, I do want to give you a platform to talk about this. What are your thoughts on this tweet from LeBron and the reactions to it?
So the tweet itself, I think it's speaking to the idea in this country that we are so jaded that we don't ask questions of human nature. We just ask, was it a good shoot or not? Did this child deserve to die because of what they were doing in that particular moment? Mm-hmm. Instead of taking a step back and saying, was there another way to handle this situation? We don't do that. We're like, okay, this person did X, so what they got is exactly what they deserve. And I think that's a fault of society as a whole and where we've come. But in terms of the reaction to me, well, I actually wish he left the tweet up, because at the end of the day, police accountability is an issue in this country. Just going back to the Derek Chauvin trial real quick, that was like one of the first times ever we saw a police chief testify against a cop, and that was a big deal. So police accountability is definitely an issue. The reaction to me is more annoying, because those people that are so against LeBron and what he tweeted have nothing to say about Brett Favre coming out and saying, well, he didn't think Derek Chauvin was purposely trying to kill George Floyd. They're very silent. In other words, I get a very free speech for me, but not free speech for thee vibe from them. Mm-hmm. And the problem I have with that is because they tie into that, well, sports and politics don't go together. And since this country's inception, sports and politics has meshed, but they don't do their own necessary homework on history and understand that. The Civil War was 1865. The first baseball game ever played, professional baseball game, was 1869. Yet it wasn't until 80 years later did we get the first black baseball player. So don't sit here and tell me that politics and sports don't go together, because politics is the reason that a black person couldn't play in Major League Baseball for almost a century. Then you have Jax Johnson, the first ever black heavyweight champion in the early 1900s, because of laws, segregated laws, and Jim Crow. They didn't want him fighting white boxers. So you have laws in society infiltrating sports. I think it's Tommy. I forgot the exact Tommy Smith and John Carlos, the track stars from the Olympics in 1968. Mm-hmm. That were backlash for holding up Black Power fists. Yet those same people that had the backlash for them had nothing to say about Herbert Hoover's racist ass and his illegal COINTELPRO to infiltrate the Black Panthers and turn them into a quote-unquote terrorist organization. They don't talk about that. They only want to talk about things when they get offended. The problem is the detractors to this don't want to speak truth. They want to speak their truth instead of actual truth. And then you have remedial people like Falco go on Debbie's show and regurgitate these talking points without actually knowing the history of matters. And then when you tell them the history, they don't want to accept it. They reject it because it's
inconvenient.
Exactly. It's cognitive dissonance tied up in willful ignorance. That's all I have to say.
I like the end there. That was pretty powerful. Like, no joke. I like that a lot. Steph, I think you should probably take this first.
Yeah. So I agree with everything you said, Greg. It is you hit the nail on the head. You gave the historical facts, and we're all better for hearing that. I look at that tweet though, and it's ambiguous, right? We can all infer what we want from that tweet that he deleted. However, what people like to the people that want to look at it as a negative, he's calling for violence against police officers, like Tom Cotton, who is a deplorable senator. He's a deplorable person, but also just happens to be a senator that's in charge of legislation, unfortunately for our country. But people like him who are looking to spin that story, I looked at it more when he says, "You're next." This is the day after Derek Chauvin gets justice is served and he's convicted, right? That tweet could have been read that same way. You're next. You're the next police officer that's going to be on the chopping block that receives justice, because we don't see it enough. But that wasn't what people were talking about. It was, spinning it so it sounds like, oh, he wants to kill that police officer. And again, it's ambiguous. Now, he follows that up, right? So he deletes that tweet, puts out the accountability tweet. And then the next tweet is, "I'm so damn tired of seeing Black people killed by police. I took the tweet down because it's being used to create more hate. This isn't about an officer. It's about the entire system. And they always use our words to create more racism. I am so desperate for more accountability." This is a man that is in our era, honestly, in just the sports world, and this is in the entirety of sports for the history, as long as we've had sports that we documented and we looked at and we recorded, he's the most vocal. We have not seen another athlete that speaks on issues like this in the way that LeBron James does on his level. He is at the top of his game, and yet he puts his name on all of this. So I believe that seeing this, it resonates with Black people because of, again, his position. This is what a lot of Black people want from their Black athletes. Not that they have to do this, but seeing him speak this way, seeing that hurt, I could understand even if there was frustration in what he was saying, and I'm misunderstanding what he meant by "you're next." But to say that this human couldn't put that tweet out and retract it and say, "You know what, I wanted to say something else," I think that there's not enough grace given. We see time and time again countless Black lives being lost at the hands of police officers, people who are sworn to protect and serve, and yet they do not do that in the Black community. This was a 16-year-old girl that had a knife. Yes, I do understand that, and that's the justification for killing her. There were other means of disarming her. There was never a de-escalation of that situation. That cop did appear to be over his head. I know that situation is tough, but they should be built to take on situations like that and save lives. We should be more considerate about them saving lives than taking lives. That should be what we care about when it comes to police officers. There are a lot, and I know their lives are important as well. At that point in time, this 16-year-old girl, without context of that situation, was from what I read about it, there was an altercation regarding cleanliness in the foster home that she was staying at, and she got into an altercation with two young women. They call them girls, but these are former foster care children who more than likely were older than Ma'Khia, and that was what ensued. 4 shots center mass, and it is something that we should not see. It should not take place. There's other means that could have been met, or other things that could have been done for them to get to a point where she didn't have to lose her life at 16 years old. And it's frustrating. And again, going back to LeBron James, he, as a vocal part of the Black community, with the platform he has, I don't agree with the reading into what we think it is in the negative light without understanding that it could have been the other side too.
So there's another historical aspect. Throughout history, the detractors of Black outspokenness have always tried to tell Black people what they're thinking and how they're thinking, as opposed to taking a step back and actually listening to the message being delivered. And this is what we saw. These are the same people, these same detractors that supported an insurrection and made excuses for said insurrection, but have had zero issues with it, but have issues with a prominent athlete speaking up on issues they have no idea of what it means to be Black in this country.
Yeah, I think that overall, this is a horrible situation. And I think, props to LeBron for, listen, you may think that he was wrong for what he tweeted. You may think that he was right for what he tweeted when he put the officer's picture up and said, "You're next." Clearly, it was misinterpreted by a lot of people on the right side. And it was kind of used, as LeBron said, to fuel hate. I agree with Steph and Greg on this one, especially what Steph said, all grace, given to you, LeBron, for when he takes it down and he explains what he meant. And he said it's used to being, he said maybe, my bad, or he said it's being used to fuel hate. And in that case, that's true. Listen, this is a very complicated situation, and it's very unfortunate that it comes on the same day where Derek Chauvin was guilty on all charges. And it's super unfortunate as a whole. And some may say, okay, she had a knife. This is different. And I've heard that. And, when you look at it at first glance for me, and I'm confident enough to say this, I did think that. I was like, okay, maybe this is different. But then you review everything and you look, there is a serious double standard in this country. And I'm not breaking that news to anybody. Listen, we've seen a guy like Kyle Rittenhouse, open fire on a bunch of people, walk in the streets with a gun, and he went home that night. He didn't even get locked up in custody. We've seen Dylan Roof shoot up a church and get taken out in handcuffs. These are all things where if said person was a Black man or a Black woman, they're not coming out of it alive, let alone in custody in handcuffs or going home that night. It's very different. And you assess the situation and you look, okay, what can the officer have done differently? Obviously, he's the youngest guy, last guy to come to the scene, first guy to open fire. And those are the facts, and that's what we have to look at. Whether you think he made the right decision or not, talking with a bunch of people, he could have tackled her. And if we're getting into the individual specifics of the situation, other means could have happened. Listen, I know she had a knife. I know she was going after the girl. No excuses there. But you know what? 4 shots to the chest. We're going for the kill. I mean, come on, guys. You can shoot somewhere besides the chest where you know she's going to die. And you don't have to spray her 4 times. All right? There's just something and that's what gets me upset about this whole situation, is that it shouldn't have happened. And there was de-escalation tactics that could have been taken that just weren't. You can't tell me if she's white with blonde hair and blue eyes that she's making it out of there dead. I just don't see it. I'm sorry.
I have friends who are current cops in the NYPD, and they have so he gave it to me from 2 perspectives. He said based on the I think it was the Defense of Life Act, it was considered a good shoot, which I also think there's issues in that law in itself.
Yes.
But if him as a cop, he said he handles that totally differently because he understands it's girls and they're younger, but he would try to defuse the situation before even deciding to pull a weapon. Like his first move wouldn't be to pull a weapon in that type of situation, in the same exact situation.
Yeah. I also want to say we haven't. I tried to find it. We don't have the ages of the 2 other women that were involved.
I know it was a foster care. So listen. I'm not going to speculate. I'm not sure. Oh, okay, it was former because I know she was the foster child.
Yeah, that's all they said was that there was a former foster care child, which that the age hasn't been put out. I'm not saying that's a justification for something, but there's also something to be said about a little girl, a 16-year-old girl that would be being attacked by, or again, not knowing how the altercation started, but being bullied or attacked or in a situation where there are adult women right? Because we keep and I read articles that called them girls and called them young women.
She called the cops. She was the one who called the police. And Greg had mentioned it. And I know we have a wide audience, but we always keep it real no matter who's listening. And Greg mentioned that he has friends that are cops. I have friends and family that are cops. Steph, I know the same is said for you. We're not incriminating every cop in America when we make statements. All right. What it is we're going after the system. And Greg and Steph, you could talk more to this in a more educated and a more pronounced manner. There's a system that's flawed, and cops that are opening fire, if a cop sees a cell phone and their first, instinct is to put their hand on their gun, that's a serious problem. And if there's cops that are thinking about resigning because of the Chauvin verdict, they probably should. And that's just the way it is. And like I said, Greg and Steph could speak more to it, but we're calling out the system here, and there are some bad cops, and there's just no excuse for it.
100% agree, Deck. You said it very well. We're going to go to a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to bring in Deb from the B Show, and we're going to continue this conversation. This is Smoke and Mirrors, presented by the Sports Hit List on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. We'll be right back.
It's the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. This is Smoke and Mirrors on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Smoke and Mirrors, presented by the Sports List on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. I'm your host, Stephen Polius, alongside my fellow hosts, Declan Krogman and Greg Polius. We also have our special guest on, Deb from the B Show. Hey, Deb, how's it going?
Hello there, gentlemen. I like your music.
Thank you.
It was my idea.
It's a vibe.
Declan, I was going to give you the credit if you gave me literally 1 second. I was giving you the credit.
I stepped all over myself.
Deb, thank you for joining us.
No problem.
We're talking about this LeBron James scale. We're talking about Ma'Khia Bryant. And Greg, I know you had a question you wanted to propose to Deb. Please go ahead.
Propose? Yeah. I'm married.
Yeah, this isn't another promposal, guys.
Okay.
It was a couple of years back.
So when talking social justice issues, as Black people, a lot of things that people in other races don't realize is the mental anguish that comes along with having the patience to have this conversation and try to convey our points. When Falco was on your show yesterday, the minute he mentioned black on black crime and stop resisting arrest, you made a face. The face heard rounds to the Sports Hit List at this point. What was going through your mind in that very moment as that was coming out of his mouth?
Honestly, don't curse. Calm down. You are put in this situation right now to educate someone who does not know what the F they are talking about. And as a Black woman, I didn't want to be labeled as an angry Black woman on a platform where I'm the only female host. So I wanted to show, Gregor left. So I wanted to show other people who may be in this situation one day how to handle yourself. And sometimes sometimes we're around people that get us upset, we may lose our cool. So I wanted to show an open platform for people to know, not everyone that has disagreements is going to end up in a screaming match. But my face couldn't hide what I really wanted to say.
Shouts out to you, for having that much grace in a moment like that. That's not easy in those moments. And, for me personally, I've been trying to focus more on protecting my energy when it comes
That's
to
my
these
biggest thing. Protect your energy, not energy, your energy.
I like that. But I mean, it is very important, and openly going into discussions like that with people that don't quite understand or choose not to understand and will spout whatever comes to their mind or regurgitate what they've heard from whatever conservative outlet, which is which is created by white people. It could be frustrating. So shouts out to you, like I said, for handling that moment, because there's a lot that could have happened that they would have painted a narrative around you for your reaction to something that seems so understandable from what Falco said to the people that agree with him. It seems understandable. But again, the grace that you had in that moment, it needs to be recognized, because it's not easy.
One thing that I also wanted to make sure that I and other people know, because when the show was done, Carl was like, "What? Like, you were so calm." I talked to him a little bit after the show, and I said I did respect in one fact that, you know, when he thought he knew like answers and I corrected him, he was like, "I didn't know that. Thank you." There are some people, even though they're wrong, they'll still try to fight you why they're right. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So that to me was a reason why I felt like I could keep talking to him, and we even both agreed we would love to like meet up one day to continue this conversation and for other things. But I think the thing that really triggered me is when he was like, you know, I'm just trying to watch sports news. And I was just like, if you don't want to hear it, turn it off. But at the same time, like, you're so tired of hearing this. We're so tired of hearing Black people being shot and killed every day, bro.
So that's when I turned it off. When he said, "I'm so tired of hearing it," because that speaks to the privilege that they don't realize they have. People like Falco, because you're maybe tired of hearing it. That's my life.
Right.
We have to live that. So for you, like, to me, there's condescension, there's cognitive dissonance, there's willful ignorance, all that wrapped in one, because you're not even taking the step back to understand where I'm coming from. And if my co-hosts want Falco to come on and he wants to try to explain further, I'm not going to be as easy on it as Deb, because I've had conversation with Falco where he has not admitted when he was wrong. He has not admitted to being factually incorrect on matters, and he has not taken into account when I present historical context to why things are the way they are.
I totally agree. Like,
I think that could be a great topic.
It wasn't even supposed to be that long of a segment. We were supposed to go into MLB and discrimination with women and working in the job force. But honestly, I was just like, thank God we didn't get to it, because I'm pro women's right. And if he had something wrong for that, I think that's when I would have lost my cool.
Yeah, Deb, I thought, and listen, when I was on your show, it was we kept it very lighthearted, to say the least, and, you know, funny and goofy and stuff. And obviously that was a different turn. Where on the B Show, you guys have really real ass conversations, and that was on display. And I just want to say, listen, I thought you handled yourself perfectly. I thought you were completely, and you had every right to be upset, because obviously, and I did speak a little bit to Brendan last night, just talking to him. I said, listen, like, you gotta, I said, you know, just like nothing emotional or anything, just, you know, texting with him. I said, listen, like, at the end of the day, I know, you know, you guys both have different opinions. But when talking about the subject of police brutality, with Black people and minorities, especially, or really only, it's a matter of life and death. So it's going to get emotional, and it's going to be uncomfortable, and it's a tough conversation, and it's tiring. As Greg said, it really is tiring. And I can't speak from that perspective, but I know from everything you guys have said to me, it's a tiring and mentally draining conversation that, listen, you know, you don't want to have the conversation because it is too real, and it's too unfortunate, and it's just tragic. And, you know, in talking to him, and he completely understood, he said, that's why it's an uncomfortable subject, because it is life or death for Black people and minorities.
But where we are in life, it's better to be uncomfortable and be acknowledgeable than to be uncomfortable and not speak up.
I think it's big time to be, you know, uncomfortable as opposed to being ignorant.
And it's so funny that, Gregor, like, you tuned out after that. What I would have tuned out after, which I don't know if you saw, is when he said, when you get pulled over by the cops, you need to just follow what they say. And, you know,
I wasn't there for that.
Yeah, he went on a resisting arrest.
I wasn't there for that.
I was just like, that's what you ain't gonna do. Yeah, like, I told him, you don't know what it's like to see a siren, and you don't even. You know how many times, I don't know if you guys, when you see like the car coming, you're like, oh my God.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're good. You know all your paperwork is good. And you're like, they're coming for me. And then you move over and they go for another car and you're like, all right, now I can breathe. Mm-hmm. Like,
Greg spoke to that the other day on the show.
Yeah.
About it.
Like, have you ever had that feeling? And don't tell someone they need to follow everything they do. If you're scared for your life, and then I even told him about the guy in the Army, which he did not know about. So explain to me why the guy in the Army was pepper sprayed, and as soon as he got out his car, they beat his knees.
I think.
Yeah. So tell us about
Yeah,
that.
he was in full uniform.
Full
Right?
uniform, and they did not care.
On.
And he did nothing wrong. So tell us why a guy who's a lieutenant in the Army was so scared to get out his car.
And Falco is all about respecting the troops. A lot of the Blue Lives Matter and people of his ilk are all about respecting the troops and showing them love.
Yeah.
How could he not know about that? That's questionable to me. That's the willful ignorance.
Yeah, he did not know about that, and
he should be outraged by something like that. This is
Did
a
he say
veteran.
he
This is
was-
the guy that
yeah.
gave who puts his life on the line for this country that they love to talk about so much and
Right.
pop up as just that. They're just props. To not know about it when it's so far removed. I mean, it happened in December, I believe, but it was a buzzing story
correct.
around the same time as Dante Wright. So it's when we choose to ignore certain conversations when we get exposed for the frauds
Correct.
that we are.
And then I
you've
also asked him, what about, the young girl who was shot? I said, okay, she was shot. They said she had a knife, but explain to me, why was she shot? Like Declan said, why was she shot in her chest?
4 times. Yeah.
Why would you not taser her? Why would you not maybe shoot her in the arm or a knee or something? Why'd you go straight to the chest
One shot.
times?
Yeah.
So
I think we've all seen like the memes on, not really memes, but the internet pictures of the comparison between Kaepernick and Ed Reed taking a knee and them saying, if this is disrespecting the troops, what is this? And
Eric Reed. You said Ed Reed.
Eric Reed.
Yeah,
Who did I say?
Eric.
Ed Reed. Eric Reed. Yeah,
Yeah.
excuse me. Eric Reed of the Niners and then the Panthers. And then we see a picture of the lieutenant getting, he has his hands up.
Mace.
He's crying. He's amazed. Exactly. He's getting stuff in his eyes, getting out of the car. And he was clearly wrongfully pulled over and wrongfully harassed. So I think we've seen stuff like that.
I just want to say thank you for having me on your show. And one thing also is I don't want this to be like a bashing on Falco, because in order for people to get where they are, sometimes they just need to be surrounded by people that educate them. And you know what I'm saying?
It's about lived experiences. Lived experiences.
And if you don't live the experience, learn from what other people are saying. And I don't want to say this is just also because of his skin color, because there are Black people, Spanish people. We've seen that when a lot of Spanish people voted for Trump. Some people believe different things. And if we have to educate them as much as possible, then that's what we're going to do. That's what Martin Luther King Jr. did. So Malcolm X, Rosa Parks, that's what we have to do. We're going to do it.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely a testament to how relatable you are as a person and how open you are to growth and conversation. If you guys spend time after the show to talk about it, I think that's great on both of you guys. I really do.
That's called growing. Berger's like, no.
I mean, I have my reservations because we've had quite the volatile exchanges. So
I think we all have to, yeah.
I know myself, and I know I would have to approach it with the right mental, because he says things that are very triggering because he doesn't know better.
Exactly.
But as far as my final points goes, Declan, you made a comment earlier about the system and the system not working properly. And I disagree. I think the system is set up to work exactly the way it's working. This is, if we go based on the first ever,
Slave patrol.
Slave patrols to hunt down runaway slaves. And then after that, it was the police decided to wear uniforms because it showed authority. Then they would try to stop coal miners from unionizing and work with businessmen and subdue their union efforts and union busting. And it just kind of snowballs throughout history that way. So in terms of the system, it needs to be dismantled and rebuilt in order for this country to get true equality. There cannot be true equality from a system that is designed to oppress those in power feel inferior.
Yeah. Then in that case, let me kind of reconstruct my point, like we should reconstruct the system and say that instead of it not working properly, it works unjustly. And it works in a manner does not do justice to the people of this country, especially Black and minorities.
Yes, I think that You hit the nail on the head, Greg and Deck. And, Deb, thank you for coming on. I really do appreciate
no problem.
taking the time.
I came in raw. No makeup, nothing.
Wait. You don't have no makeup on? I could have told, girl. Ooh.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Carl's watching. Come on, what is this?
Don't even, because you have not hit me up in a long time. So I don't even know you.
Wow.
All right. You're right.
I came for Greg.
He shot. Oh,
that's on me. You put it out there. Everybody listening, I'm gonna give my apology right now. Deb, I'm sorry. I haven't reached out to you. That's on me. I'm gonna do a better job moving forward.
That's all I can ask.
He's been busy with the show.
Thank you, Deck. Thank you.
Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on short notice.
No problem.
Yeah, I really do appreciate it.
Everyone wants to see show on Thursdays at 5 p.m.
Yes, please. Everyone's.
Am I going to be a recurring guest? I want to do some of the trivia that.
No
that
whites allowed. No, I'm just kidding.
We already know that.
I will talk to the three of you when we can. Carl told me, Declan, what you want to do, but we'll gotta wait for Mr. Gregor to be available, and I would love to have you guys on my show to do the trivia.
Yeah, I like that.
That was fun. Carl, I just gotta say on behalf of Carl, like he got done so dirty in that segment between was it Ant and who else was on that? Who was it? Ziggy was going off. I thought Carl was very upset that he didn't win. Or is that how it went? I'm trying to remember now.
Yeah, it's all right. He got me. So in the end, he's always a winner.
Oh, there we go. Well, then in that case, Carl has nothing. Beautiful. Carl has nothing to be upset about.
He can never complain. He can never complain. Well, that's going to do it for us here at Smoke and Mirrors. Again, just want to thank Deb for coming on and speaking with us on this matter. And for our listeners and our watchers, thank you for joining us and being a part of this conversation. This is Smoke and Mirrors presented by the Sports Hit List on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. And I'm your host, Stephen Polis, alongside Declan Krogman and Greg Polis. We'll see you again on Monday. Take care and have a great weekend.
It's the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.